The DNA is like a library book. These are all the possible proteins from earthworms right up to us. It's all the same library, but you've got to know which book to take out of the library. This is the big problem in genetics itself, is trying to explain how the body knows which book to take out of the genetic library. And we think the body field is what decides which piece of information is taken from the DNA.
Many cultures of the past have explored the energetic system of the body. Today, researchers theorize that the body does have a field of energy, known as the morphogenic field, or the body field.
There's a hierarchy of fields organizing our bodies. There's the field of the whole body, there's the fields of the organs, and then the fields of the tissues, and then the fields of the cells within those. Field of our own body is within and around the body. There's an overall field, and then there's subsidiary fields, sort of modular fields for arms, legs, and the different organs. The advantage of fields is that they're intrinsically holistic. All fields are holistic. The gravitational field is. You can't slice a bit out of it. If you cut a flatworm into 10 different pieces, each part can grow into a new worm. Now, how is that possible? If it was a machine, that wouldn't happen. If you cut up a machine, all you get is a broken machine. But if you cut up a magnet, a field system, then you, however many little bits of magnet you produce, each has a complete magnetic field. And it was this analogy with magnetic fields that led developmental biologists to suggest the idea of morphogenetic fields in the first place. And this was way back in the 1920s. And this field is now a crucial concept in developmental biology. You can't really understand how organisms develop without it.
All humans begin life as a single cell that grows and divides, developing into the various organs and limbs of our bodies. How these cells know what to become has baffled scientists and led to the idea of control fields in biology.
We've already found that there are different parts of the body field, some of which relate to the muscles and connective tissue. Another part of the body field that relates to the brain and nervous system. Yet another one for the morphic field, which connects back to the DNA and the genetic information of your body. So it links up with medicine in many places, so it's not different from medicine, it's just going a little bit further conceptually.
These energetic fields may provide the information necessary for controlling the body.
How does the body know to maintain its temperature at a particular temperature? What decides, or who decides, what is going to be the correct blood pressure for that person? Nobody knows, and we're saying, as a holistic idea, the body field decides to turn all the knobs.
Morphogenetic fields, or more generally fields of information, yes, are control systems over and above the molecular level or the biochemical level. They're systems that organize the body, they organize the developing organism. Plants have them too, all animals have them. They maintain the form of the body, they help bodies to recover from disease or damage, they underlie regeneration, for example.
We can go even further and could say that the human body actually is structured information, or in other words, that the human body is an energy field. An energy field of standing, stationary, scalar waves that are correspondingly organized, structured, and contain a great deal of information.
And I think that we really need a field-based model of the body if we're ever going to be able to integrate different forms of healing or medicine into a coherent understanding.
The body field is an energetic field filled with patterns of information. All of the organs in our bodies generate their own specific fields. One organ in particular seems to generate significant fields which affect the entire body.
The heart is the emperor in the system, the liver, and all the organs have other tasks, but the heart is overruling all.
There's a concept in energy medicine called energy cardiology that says that the signals produced by the heart are all of regulatory importance.
The heart is constantly emitting sound, pressure waves, heat, light, electrical, magnetic, and electromagnetic signals.
All of the cells in the body are receiving these different kinds of signals at different times because they travel at different velocities through the circulatory system.
The heart generates by far the largest rhythmic electromagnetic signal in the body. If you look at this magnetic field as a carrier wave, it's being modulated with information. So it's the carrier wave for information. And the work in our lab has shown quite clearly that it's modulated with emotional patterns. In other words, if we're feeling angry or frustrated, irritated, the information that's being imprinted on that magnetic field is very different than if we're feeling care or love or compassion towards that person.
The heart has been found to have rhythmic beating patterns that can be incoherent or coherent. These patterns are closely linked to our emotions and how we feel.
When the heart's rhythmic beating pattern is smooth and ordered, it's called a coherent rhythm. And that coherent rhythm entrains or synchronizes the brain rhythm, the nervous system, the bodily organs and glands all dance in harmony to that heart coherent rhythm.
Positive emotions, what we tend to call positive, things like love, appreciation, care, forgiveness, gratitude, all lead to a very different kind of heart pattern than negative things. Like if we're feeling anger or irritation, anxiety, those create what are called incoherent rhythms or disordered patterns. On the other hand, we have the positive feelings when we're just appreciating the sunset and how beautiful it is. Our heart's beating out this what we call coherent rhythm. It's a sine wave-like pattern that the heart is sending to the brain.
And we call it heart coherence because in research we find that the heart has to get into this synchronized, coherent, rhythmic pattern of heart rate in order for the rest of the brain and the nervous system and body to entrain and synchronize to that powerful rhythm. So it starts with the heart.
When we feel the pulse, what we're feeling is the pressure wave created by the beating heart. It's not actually the flow of blood, it's the pressure wave. So every time the heart beats, that pressure wave goes to the brain and throughout the body. And if we look at the brain level, that pressure wave synchronizes all the neurons. In fact, the brain would be in trouble if it didn't have that synchronizing signal to kind of give us a global synchronizing effect.
When someone is in coherence, you can often feel their love or their compassion or their gratitude radiating.
Coherence is the optimal physiological state that underlies learning and performance and facilitating the body's natural regenerative processes.
The heart has its own intrinsic nervous system, which can sense, feel, remember, and process information that's independent from the brain.
We always think of the information input system as being entirely in the brain. But we're now discovering information that the heart receives information first and then relays it to the brain.
Studies have shown that the heart responds faster than the brain to outside stimulation.
One of the more recent studies we did in our labs was looking at what we ended up titling the electrophysiology of intuition. And there was some previous research that had been done showing that the body would respond in a way that would predict a future event if the future event was emotionally significant and relevant to the person.
Participants were attached to sensors to record their brainwave activity, heart activity, and heart-brain interactions.
A person would be sitting in a computer, push a button, and then we're recording physiological data, and 6-8 seconds later, you would be shown a photograph. Okay, and then the photograph would be from two opposite ends of the spectrum of emotional arousal.
Participants were shown pictures of car accident victims, snakes attacking, and other disturbing images. On the other end of the spectrum, the pictures included flowers or sunsets. The photographs were randomly assigned for display to the participants.
What's key here is the computer assigned not only which photograph, but which type of photograph after the data was already recorded. So it was absolutely impossible for the research subject, the experimenter, to have any kind of foreknowledge of what photograph it might be. The computer itself didn't even know.
The results were surprising. The body responded even before the picture was displayed.
What we found was that not only did the body indeed respond prior to the event, seeing the picture, in a way that would predict it, but it was the heart that responded first.
The heart's response was not only faster, but the signal it sent to the brain varied depending on the emotional content of the picture.
Looking at the signals that the heart was sending to the brain, that the heart literally sent a different message to the brain, depending on what the future picture was going to be. Then you saw a brain response. Then you saw the body response, which is where it then became conscious. So the flow of this intuitive information is heart, brain, body, and then you have to have the body response for it to become consciously aware of it.
What these experiments reveal is changing our basic understanding of how the human body functions.
It appears as though the heart and brain, later, have access to a field of information not bound by time and space. So if we're talking kind of quantum holographics or quantum physics, that's old news. We're really starting to have ways now of showing that we really do have an energetic or an electronic system. And that's really primary. It's certainly not bound by time and space.
The heart is connected to a field of information and intelligence that's different but complementary to the field of the brain.
It's very clear these neurons in the heart and the brain part have short and long-term memory. They process information. It's a functional brain.
Other researchers theorize that the heart may be the master organ for imprinting information into the body field.
There's a lot of neural tissue in the heart, and we believe that neural tissue is there in order to act as an imprinter for the hologram.
The body's holographic body field is continually supplied with information via the pressure waves of the heart.
Inside the heart there is an enormous amount of charge. Now the pressure waves in the presence of this charge inside the chamber of the heart is sufficient to imprint information.
If the heart is transmitting or imprinting information, there must be a way for the cells in the body to receive that information.
There are receptor protein cells on the outside of the cell which are simply there to receive environmental information. How is my day today? What is going on out there? What does the body want this little cell to do today? You see what I mean? There has to be intercellular communication, but there has to be one source so there can be one control system for the body.
This control system is sending out information to the body via the body field. But what exactly is information?
If we think of the body as both a material and an energetic, dynamically exchanging open system, which it is, we need to eat like a ton of food a year and most of it is passed out. So all of that food is somehow turned into the body, which remains extremely stable for long periods of time. Somebody basically doesn't change much for maybe 40 years as an adult. People recognize you immediately, even 40 years later, because the basic body structure doesn't change, even though after a short period of time you don't have a single atom left in your body. They've all exchanged and gone out. And so now this is the hamburger I ate yesterday, and in 3 weeks from now this will be a carrot that I eat tomorrow, and so on. It's a very dynamic system, and yet I remain the same. So if it's not the material, and presumably not the energetic part, the dynamic energetic part, then what's left? There must be something like an informational pattern which holds it together.
Many scientists who are on the frontier theorize that and have demonstrated that we're an information system and it's not entirely localized in our body, that we're accessing information from the field all the time.
The body appears to be constantly connecting with information within itself and with information in the field.
The body is always looking for coherent systems, looking for information interchange between all cells he has, so that every single cell knows what's on. It's a large information system. And some people say that illness is just a lack in the information system. And I suppose they are right.
Matter is compressed energy. Information is patterns of energy. There's an information flow in our bodies that we still don't completely understand through our nervous system and through the tissues. And even the ancients, some of the ancients and the Chinese call it the acupuncture system, which is a system of information flow in the body itself.
We get a system when we get structure. You know, there's information everywhere, isn't there? But you only get an information system when it's ordered. And the great thing that was discovered in the 1980s was that the acupuncture system appears to be an organized system. It's not just a random group of acupuncture meridians. It looked, upon doing experiments, that they wanted to arrange themselves in a certain order and that they wanted to communicate with each other in a certain direction. So we're saying that information has order, and that's what makes the body feel, is the order itself.
The actual regulation of the whole organism and of all cells, the coordination of all cells, is accomplished with the help of these information fields, these scalar wave fields. They guarantee that each cell knows what every other cell is doing at any given time, and we have over 70 trillion cells. This is a lot of information, and it can only be processed with the help of these structured fields.
Ultimately, according to Einstein and other people more recently, have said that energy and information must be interchangeable. All right. So information becomes a type of energy because it's an orderliness in space. All right. So they are interchangeable, but on the other hand, in practice, what happens is you get a wave of energy, and then upon that wave you can get imprinted information. And the amount of information you can imprint appears to be limitless.
Informational medicine, medicine that takes information and changes disturbed information, is going to be the future of medicine.
Apparently, the control system of the body is not genes or chemistry, but information, which seems to be available in the body field. Is it possible to put new information into the body to affect wellness? That is exactly what a number of researchers are doing.
We've learned how to stop the distortion of information that occurs as a result of various disease processes. Once you stop the distortion, surprisingly enough, the physiology begins to work, the chemistry comes right. There are really wonderful healing stories to be told here. And it's simply because we've learned how to correct the distortion of information in your body field.
Disease is, in a sense, scrambled information. And so if we can access the appropriate information, we correct the scrambling. And that's what a number of these new energy modalities are doing. They're basically correcting that information scrambling.
That's what we've done too. I was diagnosed with thyroid cancer when I was 20, which resulted in having to have surgery, and they removed all but a fourth of my thyroid gland. I've had to take a synthetic hormone to give me the thyroid hormone that I needed ever since. I was diagnosed with chronic fatigue syndrome some years later and fibromyalgia some years later, which, I just continued to get sicker and sicker. My husband had to pick me up out of the bed if I had to get up. He had to feed me, set me up in the bed and feed me.
It got really bad to the point is where pretty much so bathed her and carried her from the bed to the bathroom and things of this nature just to for her to survive on a daily basis.
They really didn't know what to do for that type of illness. I was pretty much told that you just kind of had to live with it.
I couldn't help her, and no matter what she told me, what hurt or what felt bad or what was happening, I couldn't help her, and neither could anybody else, we didn't think.
My doctor finally said, Vanessa, I really don't know what to do for you at this point. All I can do is try to give you medicines to make you more comfortable. But I would suggest that you go see this nutritionist, and maybe she could help you figure out what you can eat, or at least, you can start to get some nutrients from something.
Vanessa actually was referred to me by her endocrinologist. When she first came to me, she was literally not able to spend a day at all out of the bed. She had lost a tremendous amount of weight. She was allergic to almost everything.
I was having a lot of trouble finding any foods that I could eat at all, which really resulted in me being so weak.
The inside of her mouth had a lot of sores inside of it. The lips had multiple sores on them, like a cold sore type thing, and her hair was like straw and coming out. The first thing I did was the nest testing.
The system is designed to determine areas of distortion in the body field. New information is made available to the body by ingesting drops that have been imprinted with an information pattern.
I started her out at the dosing that we would have addressed a child because her energy fields were that weak. So we started out very, very cautiously.
One morning I woke up after I had been seeing Deborah probably for a couple of months, and I just had this feeling that I hadn't ever had. And I knew that this was the answer. And I felt so good that I just cried. I just sat up in the middle of my bed and I just cried and cried and cried.
In about 6 months, she reached an energy level of where the body was beginning to transfer message more effectively, to where every layer that we went through, she was showing remarkable health changes.
Being from a man's standpoint and a southern country boy type person is how I grew up. I first thought it was hocus pocus, and I had my doubts, and it took a while, but I see now that it's phenomenal. It truly is.
I've become healthy enough to what I think is living a normal life again, because now I can clean my own house. I can cook my meals. I can even work in the yard. I can even wash my car. I can do things that I never thought I would ever be able to do again.
It's 180 degrees from where it was. It's just a total turnaround. It really is.
I really don't know how to explain the difference in the way I feel. It's like I died and I come back to life. And I never thought that I would ever feel this way again. I got my life back. I got my life back, and it's wonderful.
We're on the threshold of an entire new understanding of how disease happens, how information is transferred, and how to enhance information transfer within living systems. There's a vast increase in chronic disease in our community, and I believe using these information methods that we can treat the chronic disease that couldn't be treated before.
One of the most remarkable instances of the effectiveness and the instantaneous effect of informational medicine I heard about recently, and it had to do with this system called thought field therapy, which is an energy psychology that supposedly heals and changes negative thoughts around us. And the theory is that negative thoughts hang around us almost like a net, and they affect bodily systems. They use this system in Kosovo with survivors of the war in former Yugoslavia. These were families who'd been severely traumatized because the policies of ethnic cleansing were to kill half of a family just so the survivors would be demoralized. So they took a group of people who had severe post-traumatic stress syndrome, who would have required years and years and years of talking cures and medicine and all that sort of conventional thinking. and they gave them thought field therapy. And to a person, this is 100% of the people in this study were made virtually instantly better, to the point where they were laughing, joking. They were healed completely from this trauma. Even the practitioners of energy psychology were blown away by the power of this modality. But this just gives us one small example of the power of using information as medicine.
So the most important thing for people to do is to take total responsibility for their health, not to think that it comes from outside themselves or that somebody else can give it to them. And by taking total responsibility, that may mean they have to start with choosing the thoughts that they think so that they are in a good state of mind, the state of mind that's most conducive to healing.
One of the fundamental things that has to change in the future of medicine is this focus on the gene as being the solution to every illness. If you look at what epigeneticists are coming up with, you have an understanding that the gene is really subordinate to this outside information system, and that we have to look at information rather than the gene as being the thing that we have to crack, so to speak. We have to come up with information systems that regularize the things that go wrong.
I think there is absolutely no question that healthcare today at a global level is in crisis. And it's a crisis of meaning, it's a crisis of economics, it's a crisis of leadership, and it's a crisis of our models and our understanding of what promotes or facilitates healing.
We do things like we have a war on cancer. We try to destroy invading organisms. It's a warfare model of health and disease and how to treat disease. And the body really doesn't go for that.
We have to learn from other cultures, from other traditions, from the observations of all the different kinds of healers that are working in our own cultures at the moment. We have to take the best of modern science and use it to integrate what's going on.
What we need to do is foster a revolution that shifts our model from a disease-centered orientation to a healing-centered orientation. And once you begin to make that move, you are, responsive to a variety of different factors that can facilitate or enhance our natural healing capacities.
I think we can rightly say the revolution has begun. Not just in my case, there are research workers all around the world who are thinking much the same and who have research data that we can incorporate into these new ideas of the body field. But I think now we have a viable scientific theory for how the body stores and accesses information. So we do have a medical revolution on our hands.
There seems to be this huge body of evidence demonstrating that we can pick up information that almost like an electron, we can be everywhere at once.
So I would say what healing is learning to correct the human body field so that it works according to the original blueprint.
So ultimately what I'd like to see is a shift from this disease-centered to this healing-centered model, and recognizing that healing is a profound mystery and that we have so much to learn, and rather than presuming we have the answers, staying open to the possibility that there are new things that we can discover for how to enhance the human condition.
The mind is the functioning of the brain that interprets the environment and adjusts the biology. So rather than being controlled by our genes, our biology is controlled by our mind. And when you understand this, then you realize the power of being able to change your mind, because when you do that, you change your biology and your genetics.
If someone's sick, they don't want to know whether pill X works better than a placebo in a double-blind trial. What they want to know is, what's the best kind of treatment?
I believe that we are more powerful than we realize. I believe that many of the medical techniques that we're finding to be very successful, people can do on themselves once they understand their own energetics.
It's very clear that negative information is deleterious, or that if you accept it into your body and into your belief system, it will change the way you react and change your state of health.
We know that from work by William Tiller and others, we found that when you begin to work with reconnective healing, there's an amount of, I believe he calls it, excess free thermodynamic energy that is released. That if this were just energy or just energy healing instead of the reconnection, for this amount to be released and this change to happen in people, it would require that the room temperature rises over 300 degrees centigrade, which of course does not happen because we're accessing something new and something different.
And coherence is the natural resonant state of the human body. In other words, we do have, us humans, we have a resonant frequency. Okay? And it's also what we call the coherent state.
So a miracle starts with a change of thinking. It's like when I changed my thinking about my tumor, and I decided it was my best friend and my guide, rather than it being the worst thing that had ever happened to me. That was the miracle. When I gave it permission to stay to the end of my days, that was the miracle. People think it's the end result, but it's not the end result. It's the change of thinking which leads to a completely different inner state.
You need both. You need the will to be healed and the good information from a therapist, from infoceuticals, whatever. Yes, of course. This has to come together. This has to match.
So healing is restoring the body's own self-repairing mechanisms. And that's the biggest thing as a doctor you can achieve, that you can help your patients with restoring their own repairing mechanisms.